Thank you all so much for spending your evening with us. My name is Marissa, and I'll be your Zoom co-host today. This way, Christine, who you can see here, can focus on the cooking and on answering your questions. So we are taping the entire class. You probably got the little, permission slip when you first logged in. So you will receive a full recording after we put it up on YouTube. Feel free to turn your camera on if you like. I'd love to see if you're cooking along with us, and I'm sure others would too. We are asking that you stay on mute for the entire class. That way everyone can hear Christine's instructions and stories at all time. However, we definitely want to hear from you in the chat. So if you're not familiar with where that is, that's in the lower bottom row of your screen. And if you want to go ahead and open that up and type in the chat where you're cooking from today, we always love to see where folks are coming from. And we've gotten some really wonderful nationwide representation over the last couple of classes. So the chat button, we've got Bellevue, Washington. Thank you, Barbara. Ghent, New York. Thank you, Steve. So there we go. We're already coast to coast, Christine.
Excellent.
Yeah. Okie dokie. So, okay. Now that everyone has determined where the chat box is, I'm going to pass the mic over to Christine to get us started. She's going to tell us a little bit about herself as the resident recipe developer at Sahadi's. This is also where I want to remind you about her award-winning cookbook, Flavors of the Sun. If you buy it directly from our site, you can get it personalized by Christine. Also, I've been meaning to tell you, Christine, that I made that red lentil soup from the book recently, and my toddler loves it, which is like really mind-boggling to me that like one of his favorite foods right now is this red lentil soup. And I wanted to just ask you really briefly as sort of an opener, as a little appetizer, a amuse-bouche, like how is that recipe so good? Because there aren't that many ingredients in it. I mean, I counted, it was something like 8 or 7 ingredients if you don't count like salt and pepper. So can you kind of use that to segue into like how you recipe develop?
Yeah, sure. Well, hello everybody. Welcome to my home kitchen. My name is Christine Sahadi Whelan, and I am the culinary director of Sahadi's in 2 stores in Brooklyn and a kiosk in Manhattan, as well as a liquor store, a specialty Middle Eastern liquor store in Brooklyn. So this is what I do. I do recipe development in all areas. I actually love it, but I'm a big fan of you start with traditional and then you branch out a little bit from there. So you start with the recipe of red lentil soup is it's very common. It's prepared all over the Middle East with slightly different spices. So it's really just a matter of what you use. Do you like Aleppo pepper to give it a little kick? Do you like carrots, or do you prefer onions or scallions? What your, is garlic in your repertoire, or are you somebody that or you somebody that does not enjoy garlic? I think that's really the way a lot of these recipes are developed. I mean, I like strong flavors, so I'm always going to go with slightly spicy, slightly, definitely savory, warm flavors, because that pleases my palate the most. But recipes like red lentil soup are so basic that if you like cilantro, you can absolutely throw that in. If your jam is parsley, you can throw that in. There's a lot of options, which I think is one of the nice things about a soup like that. When you're starting with a few ingredients, you can throw something in there just because it pleases you. And you can personalize it with whatever you happen to have on hand that day. It doesn't have to be cumin if you don't have cumin. I mean, we're partial to cumin. We always put it, but if you don't have cumin, you can certainly use coriander or use even a spice blend. It doesn't really matter that much as long as it's a spice that you really enjoy. The nice thing about red lentil soup is the texture, that it purees itself. You don't actually have to do anything to the soup. You can just put it in the pot, which is, I think, one of the reasons why it's texturally so pleasing. The little bits of carrots or the little bits of onions, or if you put cilantro or parsley, that's the texture, because the lentils themselves do not have texture because there's no skin to hold it together. So I think a lot of recipe development is looking at the underlying ingredients and deciding what you're looking to achieve. And if it's texture, then you add more texture. If you just want something soothing and smooth, then you would put anything that added texture, you would just add seasonings. So it's really nice to personalize with whatever works for your palate that day. It doesn't even have to be the same. In my house, it's not the same every time. It's whatever I feel like that day. And I think that that's something that's really nice for people to work with.
So tell us a little bit about the history of the dish that you're making today. I'm curious if this has always been something you all have offered or if it's like a more recent deli offering.
It's more recent when we put our Saj line in, which is our sandwich line. In the last 5 years, we put that in. But in terms of it being a Middle Eastern dish, it's something that it's very much like a bowl in any culture. A bowl is comfort food, whether it's a Middle Eastern bowl, whether it's a Southeast Asian bowl, whether it's a European bowl, South American. Everybody who makes bowls, I feel like it's a comfort food for them. It's what you want to eat when you've had a long day, you just want to come home and eat something that tastes really delicious and that's somewhat customizable. The nice thing about bowls is that I don't know if you could see the meats that I have prepped out. I have different toppings. So I might like sauce on mine, you might like tomatoes on yours. The basic is going to be the rice. Today we're doing chicken shawarma bowls. So the basic is going to be the Arabic rice on the bottom, and then of course the chicken shawarma, which I'm going to show you. And then the topping is going to be whatever suits you that day. So, or whatever you happen to have in the house. This is not the kind of dish that you're going to run to the store and buy ingredients for. You're going to look in your house and say, I have pickles, I have olives, or I don't. I have tomatoes, or I have cucumbers, or I don't. So you can really just use whatever. I mean, I picked a mixture of things that I like. I like my food to be aesthetically attractive. So I picked a range of things with different textures and different colors, and some fresh and some pickles for the top. But it could really be anything. And I think one of the nice things about a bowl is anything goes. And each person in your household can decide what they like or don't like, which makes it a little bit easier on the cook because you're not making 6 dishes, you're making 1 dish. Most people like chicken and rice, and then you're adapting. So so that's what we're gonna do. I mean, we're gonna do the chicken shawarma first. We're gonna marinate, then we're gonna go to cooking the Arabic rice. While the rice is cooking, we'll put the chicken in the broiler, and then we'll make the yogurt sauce for the top, and then we'll just garnish and decorate, which in a nutshell, it's actually a very easy dish. It looks complicated because there's 3 different steps, but in all honesty, this whole thing is going to be done start to finish in the amount of time that we have on this class. So it's definitely not a complicated dish, especially if you are prepared. If I was doing this for my home, I would have marinated the chicken last night. I would have taken away 1 or 2 of the steps. But because I wanted this class to be representative of the whole process, I am doing it in all at once. But if you were to marinate the meat yesterday, whether it was chicken or beef or even shrimp, you can really do this with anything. It's more just a concept. Once you do that, then you save 1 step. So it cuts back on the time a little bit that it takes to do things. Or you can prep your decorations, your decorative toppings the day before. There's lots of things you do. The only thing that I always do in the moment is the rice, because Arabic rice tastes best when it's hot and when it's fresh. Anything else, the yogurt sauce could have been made yesterday. There's lots of things, lots of time saving techniques here. And like if I make yogurt sauce, I'm definitely going to make enough for several days, because tomorrow this shawarma chicken, if there's left over, might become a wrap or a sandwich. So I'm going to save the rest of my toppings and as well as my sauce to stretch this out for a minimum of 2 meals if I can get away with it, because it makes your life a little bit easier on another day. And all working parents, or even just people that are just working, who are not parents, who are working a lot of hours, need sometimes saving techniques to make it a little bit easier going forward.
Yeah, I am super excited to see how you prepare this rice. Okay, so let's get going on this chicken.
Okay, so well, this is right here. I've got my chicken and my rice preparation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my olive oil to the chicken. We use chicken thighs because they stay juicier. You can use breast. You just need something that's boneless. Like I said, just use this because it stays juicier for for the long term. I use the prepared shawarma spices because it's just easier and quicker. You can certainly do your own garlic and cumin and salt and pepper and Aleppo pepper and coriander and make your own, and paprika. But if you can buy it, most Middle Easterners, this is available in almost any Middle Eastern store. So it's just for the sake of convenience and ease. I used it like this. I add a few tablespoons. You can add as much or as little as you like. I tend to like things more savory, like I said earlier. So I add a significant amount of spices. You could make it lighter if your taste is not, or if you have children that don't like a lot of spice, and then you can sprinkle on top afterwards. This can be marinated certainly up to overnight, because there is no acid, except whatever little bits come in this evening. There is no lemon juice or anything added, so it will not. It'll taste just as good tomorrow. It probably even tastes a little better as the seasoning blends with the meat and the olive oil. The olive oil is to make sure it doesn't stick, as well as I did line the pan because I'm a big fan of recycling the foil and moving on to make my life easier. So I mean, if I don't have to wash my dishes, I'm grateful. So here is our chicken, and we're gonna let that sit off to the side when we talk a little bit about the ingredients in the rice. Okay, now for the rice, most Middle Eastern stores, you're going to find, this is in Arabic it's sharia, in English it's vermicelli. It comes chipped like this though, in a Middle Eastern store. You don't have to break it down from the big pieces. You can also just buy vermicelli and crunch it up with your hands. But in any Middle Eastern store is gonna have packages prepared just like this. I use clarified butter because I don't like the greasy mouthfeel of regular butter, the milk solids in my rice. You could use olive oil if you wanted. Butter is definitely gonna add flavor, without a doubt. But you could add olive oil, I've done it in a pinch, or you could use regular butter. It's just gonna be more, you're definitely gonna feel that the milk solids as on the top of the rice as opposed to clarified butter. But you use what you have, and clarified butter lasts forever. And basically you can just leave it on your counter. It doesn't even need to be refrigerated, so. I always have it, but if you don't have it, don't use it. You won't miss anything. I'm gonna start heating the butter, and then we're going to fry the noodles a little bit. So I'm gonna put it like maybe about medium high, and when all the clarified butter is melted, I'll bring it over, and we're gonna fry the noodles. Once the noodles are,
Christine, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah, could you bring that little dish of noodles to the camera? Because
Yeah,
I don't know exactly what that is, and I'm sure other people are curious too.
Yeah, so in any Middle Eastern grocery store, you're gonna see these all broken down like this. Like it's gonna come in a package, it's gonna look just like this. I did nothing to it. They just opened the package and dumped them in here for me. You could also use orzo. Orzo needs a little bit longer to cook than these little skinny noodles, but I mean, I've done both. In a pinch, I would use orzo. This is my preference because they cook almost perfectly at the right amount of time with the rice. Also, that I am going to use a converted rice. You could use any kind of rice. Traditionally, I don't know why, but when I was growing up, we always used converted rice, like an Uncle Ben style, where the rice was part cooked so that it would cook in the right amount of time. But you could do it with jasmine rice, you could do it with basmati rice, you just have to adjust your timing to allow for different styles of rice. This is a very traditional, the way we would do it in my house kind of way. But yeah, I mean, rice is rice. I don't think that it's 6 of one, half dozen of another. You just choose what you have in your closet if you didn't specifically have this type of rice or you don't eat this type of rice at home. So the clarified butter is getting very, it's getting fully melted. Once it's fully melted, we're gonna throw the noodles in and we're gonna brown them. And then we will add the rice, and I'm gonna put a cinnamon stick in there. You can use allspice, you can grate some nutmeg, you can use nothing but salt and pepper. It really, it's preference. I like cinnamon, one cinnamon stick. I don't particularly like it ground because I don't wanna muddy the rice. So I just throw the whole stick in there and remove it at the ends. But that's, once again, it's a personal preference.
That's
the
so
rice is very forgiving. You can pretty much do anything. I mean, you can put any flavors that you particularly enjoy. This is a very traditional style. If I have the time and the energy, sometimes I'll grate a little bit of nutmeg. But allspice also is a very similar. You want a warm spice. If you're gonna put a spice, you want a warm spice. You don't necessarily want lemon zest or something. You want something that's warm as opposed to bright.
That's so
now, as you
so
can see, the butter is completely melted, and we're gonna put the noodles in. Of course, using clarified butter means we don't have to worry about burning or about whatever temperature the stove is on. If you're not using clarified butter, then you have to be careful that the noodles do not burn. We're just gonna let this simmer for a minute, and then we're gonna add the rice. Generally, I do usually about double water to rice because I have to allow for the noodles to also absorb some of that. So for that reason alone, normally I would probably do closer to 1.5, but when you're adding the pasta, you have to allow for that. Otherwise, the rice would be too dry. We definitely don't want the rice to be dry. We want it to be moist and flavorful, but separate. We want the grains to be separate, and we want it to be, just ready to absorb any leftover juices from the meat as we put the bowl together. So we're gonna fry these up. They're already starting to brown. It takes about 5 minutes. You can also, if you're in a pinch, in a crunch time, at the store, we do the noodles separately. We do the noodles in the oven, so we can do big batches at a time, and not 1/4 cup. So you can put the clarified butter, melt it, mix it with the noodles, and put the whole thing in the oven on a piece of parchment paper. And then we do it in advance. So it saves a step because sometimes we make 5 batches of rice a day, and this is an extra 5 minutes. And the store doesn't always have the luxury of that extra 5 minutes. But you can do it either way. I mean, at home, I just do it all at once. I want to make it as easy as possible. You can also add nuts if you like at this point. I did not for the purposes of this class because of the allergy issue, and it seems easier to do. But at home, we would also put either pine nuts or slivered almonds in here with the noodles as it was frying. So all of this together would brown, and then the rice is added in addition. So we're gonna give this another minute or two to brown up. You can do it high, you just have to be careful that you don't burn it. They're very, very thin and they burn very, very quickly. So sometimes it'll go from being just barely brown to being burnt in 3 seconds. So it's just a matter of watching what you're doing. So we're gonna put that one in and then we're gonna start, then we're gonna put let me put the broiler on. Chicken can be baked, can be broiled, could be done in a grill, could be done in a pan. There's lots of flexibility. I like broiling for it because it's fast. And I generally put it in a pan lined with oil because, like I said, once again, the cleanup's quick and easy, and I can get it out of the oven very efficiently. Because the pan, I use a huge frying pan. The pan has a handle, so I can just grab it with a towel and pull it out when it's ready. Chicken is cut in very small slices. I don't know if you can see this from before. So the chicken is basically it's chicken thighs, and they go shortwise, and we slice it fairly thin because we want it to cook rapidly and still be juicy. Oh, the noodles are coming along. So let me show you how we're going. So if you can see, the noodles are browning. Can everybody see that? They're browning and they're just at the point now, I don't want them to burn, so I'm gonna throw the rice in real quickly so that the rice just sautés 1 minute with the noodles and then we can add the water.
So
Like
Christine,
I said, it's a very short time between browning and burning. So
Right,
as soon as you
right,
see it's
right.
getting very brown, it's a good time to throw the rice in. Just give it a quick saute so that the rice will, the butter will coat each grain of rice and it will help them keep the grain separate and it won't be sticky. Now we're gonna throw in our cinnamon stick. And then our water. Gonna give it a real good stir. At this point, I'm gonna add some salt and pepper. We can also reseason again at the end, of course, but I like to get started. And then as soon as it comes to a boil, I'm gonna lower the heat, give it a good, give it one more swirl, cover it, lower the heat, and then it will be cooking while we start on our chicken. While that's getting ready to boil, let's take our chicken. Let's spread it out nice and neat in the pan so that it cooks nice and evenly.
This pan is amazing. I don't think this is a common size pan.
No, it's giant, but I keep it in the oven so I don't have to store it. And I use it anytime I bake in the oven and when I just need a giant saute pan. But I don't use it that much for sauteing. I use it more for stuff like this because I don't want to splatter all over the oven. Once again, if I can keep things clean, I'm gonna do that because I don't need another job when I'm done cooking. So and this pan allows plenty of room to spread everything out. And you can do as much or as little chicken as you want. I mean, if you're not big on protein, if you're not big on meat proteins, then you could do a little bit of chicken and some chickpeas. That's another thing, we've done. I didn't make it complicated here, but there's lots of flexibility in, you could just take the rest of the shawarma spices and you could sprinkle on some chickpeas and heat them up. So there's a lot of different options to make sure that everybody's happy and that you have, the right amount of macros in your meal and you're not stressed out. Okay, it's almost boiling now. We'll give it one more second. Give it a nice stir. Okay. Cover on. Set to medium low. And then we'll work on the meat. So now you see we have our meat spread out nice and thin, 1 layer. Broiling means 1 layer because you're not going to turn these individual little strips. It's going to take an hour. And it's definitely, there's no reason to do so. So the most important thing is 1 layer. If you don't have a giant saute pan like this, you can just use a sheet pan. This way you can spread things out. I have sheet pans, but since this is in the oven, it seems more efficient to use it. I'm going to put it at the top shelf of my oven on broil, which has been preheated because I don't want it to get over dry. I really want to make sure that we keep it as efficiently as possible so that we have plenty of moisture in it. Okay, now let's move on to the next one. Let me just make sure that this is boiling. Okay, so rice is boiling. I can smell it already. It smells great. The clarified butter, the seasoning, the cinnamon stick. It really is lovely. This will be we'll use the rest of the shawarma spice to sprinkle on top in case anybody wants it a little bit more savory. And let's talk a little bit about the yogurt dip. So I'm sure most of you have heard of tzatziki. I'm really flexible with my tzatziki. I put in whatever I have, whatever's growing in my garden. You know, you have to be, it's easy to just use either what you have or what's readily available, but to stress out about having a certain type of mint or a certain type of, today we used dill and parsley because that's what was available. So that's what we used. I like the full fat yogurt, just like you could use less butter in the rice and make it a little bit lighter. You could use a light yogurt and it won't be as rich. Depending on how much you're drizzling over, I don't think it makes that much of a difference. It makes a big difference in flavor and it makes not a lot of difference in fat content or calories because you're not putting a ton on there. So, and Middle Easterners always use a full fat Arabic style yogurt. So this is not a Greek yogurt, this is an Arabic style yogurt, which is slightly more sour, a little bit less thick than a Greek yogurt. And it's got a lot of flavor. We do not, in my house growing up, we never ate sweetened yogurt ever. It's just not a thing. Even in the supermarkets over there, it's just not a thing. Yogurt is savory. So I think that this is a somewhat traditional. So let me talk a little bit about the ingredients here. So we talked about the yogurt. This is a grated cucumbers. So what we do is we grate the cucumbers, and in order for the tzatziki not to be too watery, we drain them in a paper towel or a towel. So as you can see, there's no liquid. Usually cucumbers let off a lot of liquid, but we squeeze these really well dry so that we can determine the amount of liquid by the amount of lemon juice we're adding, not by the amount of water that's coming out of the cucumbers. So so that's why it's grated like this so finely, and also because I want to put it in a squirt bottle, and if it's too big pieces, it won't squirt out the bottom. So so that's why we did it that way. So this is a fresh grated, it's a Persian cucumber, and we left the skin on for the sake of it being more attractive aesthetically and also leaving a little bit of texture. So that's why we did that. So here we have our herbs, which is parsley and dill, like I said before. I'm going to save a little for the top, and I'm just going to sprinkle most of it in there. Okay. Here we have our garlic because every good tzatziki should have some garlic. So there's some grated garlic. Okay, what do I have here? I have my fresh lemon juice. And here I have some salt. I probably don't need all of this. I'm just going to split out what I think I need. Okay. Then we're just going to get a fork and we're going to stir it up real good because it's way better to have everything nice and blended before you try to stick it into the little squirt bottle here. This will last for at least a week in the refrigerator. It tastes great. It tastes even better if you make it in advance because it gives time for the flavors to blend. But like I said, I wanted you guys to see the whole process, so I made it right now. But I would definitely make this the night before. Like I keep a squirt bottle in my fridge. I will make this maybe once every week or two and just leave a squirt bottle in the fridge like other people have mayo. And then we just stored it on top of things. So it's super easy to put together. And like I said, you could put parsley, you could put dill, you could fool around with it with herbs from that are not traditional in the Middle East. You could put basil and garlic if that's what if that's the flavor profile you want for the day. So it's very forgiving. You can do a lot of different things with it, and it elevates a dish a little bit, a sandwich or a dish from ordinary to a little bit special without making it a lot more complicated. Okay, so we're gonna fill our squirt bottle, which I'm gonna go off camera to do that to make it a little easier because drain it.
So while Christine is doing that, let me know if anyone has any questions. Drop them in the chat. Happy to share them with Christine. They can be about the chicken shawarma bowl, or they can be about anything having to do with Saharis.
Okay, now we're going to check on the progress of our chicken and our rice. So like I said, you can just drizzle this on top. There's absolutely no reason to need to put it in a squirt bottle. It's just, I keep it in the fridge this way so it's easier. It's easier to work with. Let's look at our oven and see how our chicken's doing. I smell it. It smells awesome. Okay, I'm gonna take my tongs and just move it around a little bit. Just to make sure that I cooked every part thoroughly. Just remember, when you use your tongs, bush chicken.
She goes in and out.
Hey, Nidhi, can you unmute Christine?
Okay,
There we go.
so now let's talk a little bit about the garnishes. Let me check on the rice, and then we'll talk a little bit about what we're gonna put on top of the dish and what other options would be available. Just check out the rice situation. Ooh, the rice looks beautiful. Needs about 5-6 more minutes. We have these pretty little noodle strips in there, nice and brown, so contrasted with the rice. Gotta make it a little bit open to boil down a little bit, so it gets a little bit dry. If you see that your rice seems too moist after 20 minutes, make up, it's just leave the cover up, and it will boil its way down. It knows what to do naturally, as long as you leave the cover up. That way you can make sure that you get the texture that you like. Some people like their rice very soft, some people like theirs a little bit firmer, al dente, so that's really a personal preference. But anyway, so we want to talk a little bit about garnishes. What did I choose? Well, like I said, I chose a mixture of cooked and pickled and raw. I chose Kalamata olives. I chose cornichons. I like a little bit of vinegar and a little bit of tartness in my in most of my dishes to add up a little bit of brightness. So I also chose pickled turnips. We pickle them in house, as well as the cauliflower. Cauliflower is a little bit sweet. The turnips are more tart, and of course cucumbers, because every Lebanese uses cucumbers in almost everything. Tomatoes, fresh mint, and whatever herbs I have left over from the tzatziki. So I normally do a lot mix. I like a lot of herbs in my food. There are other family members that are happy to have it as a garnish, but don't really want a lot of herbs in their mouth, so to speak. I prefer a lot of herbs, so I always leave a dish on the table. I also have a little dish of Aleppo pepper because I like a little bit more of a kick. I use it on a lot of things. Besides the fact that it's a coarse grind, it's a little bit smoky. It's a coarse grind, but it's very, very vibrant in color, and it's not very hot. So you can use it as a finishing pepper to give a little bit more, a little bit more brightness and kick to your food, where you're not really incinerating your mouth, which is kind of, it's a very nice finishing pepper. I use it fairly constantly. So so we're gonna use that on top. We're gonna start to construct our bowl in a few minutes when the rice is done. See how we're doing here.
Jane, one, could you turn the lights on? It is getting dark after all.
Yes, you just tell me when they're good enough.
And two, could you talk a little bit more about how you guys pickle in store? How far in advance do you do that? The pickled cauliflower and things like that. Just talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. We have somebody that pretty much, I'm gonna stir as I talk because I want to make sure that the rice doesn't over. We pretty much make pickles, turnips, and cauliflower like 3 times a week. We make a 50-pound bag. We supply it for both stores and for the kiosk. So one store makes it and everybody shares it. We make year round. Turnips are nothing, they're just vinegar, water, and salt. Cauliflower has a little bit more ingredients. You have to cook the brine first and let a little bit of sugar dissolve. But yeah, we make both in house. We like things that are very bright, and sometimes when you bring, everybody in Lebanon makes beautiful pickled turnips, but by the time they get here by boat, the color is duller, and we want them to be really bright and fresh tasting, which is why we do them in house. Pretty much at least twice a week, sometimes 3 or 4 times a week, depending on sales. Because we also sell them in our Aleppo, so they're being sold by the pint. They go on every bowl, every single bowl that leaves the store. I'm just gonna check on the chicken as we're speaking. Oh, the chicken looks lovely. Let's move this over so we can put out the chicken. So I'm gonna put a towel down. I can show you guys the chicken without burning my counters to death. All right, let's go. Yeah, we're all set. Okay, great. Because I have this big giant pan, I have to make sure I don't burn my counter. Okay, so the chicken shawarma is done. Like I said, I would definitely sprinkle a little bit more at the end, because that gives you a little bit of a refreshing color from the paprika. Of course, when you use a big giant pan with a handle like this, you need to keep the handle covered so that you don't burn yourself. That's the only drawback, but the advantage is it's much easier to carry. Okay, and we have our rice is pretty much finished. So let me talk a little bit about the wine I'm pairing it with. I am pairing it with the Casara Sunset Rosé. Why? Because number one, it's a delicious wine. but number two, because I'm a firm believer in if you drink rosé in September, it's not winter yet, it's not fall, and it still feels like it could be summer. So as long as the weather's cooperative, I mean, it's not very warm today, but it's not freezing. I feel like rosé extends the season a little bit. So that's why I chose this line. It's one of my favorite rosés, but I really love the fact that it still feels like fresh and light, and I'm not quite ready to go into heavy dishes yet. I feel it coming, but I'm not ready yet, so that's why I chose this line. Okay, let's put the dish together. I'm gonna bring over the rice so you can see it, and then I'll spoon it onto the dish. So I'm assuming, Marissa, can you see that? Can you
Yes.
see? You can see it. Okay, great. So you see the little bits of noodles are there. There's still some moisture to the rice. If I left it another minute or two, it would absorb. But that's because I didn't measure it per se. I just kind of threw it in the pot. But generally speaking, if you go double, you're going to be just over the amount that you might be just over the amount you need. But it will also mean that if you leave the rice on the stove for half an hour, it's going to still be nice and moist. Which, in my case, is a plus because nobody ever comes home to eat at the same time. So it gives us an advantage. You just have to pull out the cinnamon stick because obviously you can't eat it. But let's make a nice dish and let's construct.
I know you mentioned up at the top the different kinds of whole spices that you could put into your rice. We've had a couple people join us since you talked about that. So maybe just recap what you said about the cinnamon stick.
Sure, yeah. I've used a whole cinnamon stick because I like warm spices in my rice. You could also grate nutmeg, which goes really great in rice. Cardamom also goes very nicely in rice. Allspice is another one that we use. Some people use traditionally. It depends on whether or not you like very traditionally sweet spices in your rice. I do because that's what I grew up with. But some people find allspice to be less, for lack of a word, sweet, but it still has that same warm undertones. So you could really use any of them, or you could even just use a spice blend or whatever you particularly like at home. You could use nothing, but I feel like a Middle Eastern rice usually has one of those sweet things. Sometimes we use saffron. You definitely want to have it's nice to have another flavor. It's not necessary, but it is nice. Okay, so here we go. So we've got our rice. We've got our chicken. So let me put the chicken, I'll put a little bit more rice. Okay. Okay, and then, like I said, I used a very traditional Middle Eastern spices here. Garnish. So fresh mint, we use it on everything. I just picked it out of the garden 20 minutes before we started this. So I did use mint. Tomatoes and cucumbers are a classic. Here we go with the olives and pickles. Turnips you'll find on almost every Middle Eastern menu. If you get a sandwich from almost any sandwich shop in anywhere in Lebanon, even most places in New York, you will definitely find turnips on there. It's a classic, and also an Arabic style cucumber, which I didn't ask them to put on the thing, so we don't have it, which is called mitki. It's a long cucumber, very pale, with long ridges in it. You eat the whole thing. You don't peel it. We also put that on everything. We always have it on our at the shop. We have it on everything. I like to garnish, like I said, with Aleppo pepper to give you a little bit of zing. And then the last flourish is always going to be either mint, parsley, some kind of herb. Herbs are prevalent, and we use them in a lot of different dishes. So we always have them, and most Middle Easterners that I know grow them. So they have herbs in their yard. They just go out and see what they have, and that's what gets used. That's what I do, but that's what almost every Middle Easterner I know does. Let's move the garnishes out of the way, and then let's work on the topping. This is why you have to grate the cucumber jar small, because sometimes it won't come out if you don't. Ooh. Oh, it's stuck. Let's see this. Cucumber stuck right in there.
Now that is quite a bowl. That's definitely enough for like what, 2 people?
Yeah, it's just like we make it at the store, except we either wrap them or we make them flat, depending on what the customer wants.
So I dropped the description of the wine in the chat for everyone. The Casara Rose Sunset, you said, right?
Yes, it's a lovely one. You can see, let me talk a little bit about it. So the Lebanese have a very strong wine culture because their wine culture they were controlled by the French for a very, very long time. So when the French came into the country, they brought all their grapes and they planted, even though Lebanon does have native grapes, they planted all of the French grapes because that's what they felt like was going to be the most popular, let's say. Over the years, Lebanon has a lot of the indigenous grapes are now back in. So a lot of wineries make both indigenous grape wines and traditional wines. This is a traditional wine. Casara has been, I think it's the oldest, it might be the oldest winery in Lebanon. We went about a decade ago. It's in a monastery, or it's underground. The whole thing is underground except for the vines. Beautiful, beautiful things. They make everything from, this is a traditional, it's not a Provence style, it's a traditional Lebanese rosé. It's a little heavier than Provence, but it isn't, it's fruit forward, but it's not sweet at all. Depending on what style of wine you like Provence is going to be extremely light. Some of the other Lebanese are very fruity. This, I feel like, strikes a perfect balance for me. I'm not a sweet wine person, so it's light enough to not feel too berry forward, but yet it's drier than a lot of the other Lebanese styles. They also make an Obidi, which is also that's an indigenous grape. So I think a lot of the wineries now are going back and either using a blend of indigenous and French, or in some cases they're doing like with Casara, they do French style, then they do Middle Eastern style, and then they do blends, which is really interesting because I think that especially in lesser known wine regions like Turkey or Morocco or Lebanon, where people don't think the wine culture is so strong, especially in Morocco and Lebanon, which was settled by the French for so long, that even though it's not a traditional wine culture, they have a very rich and robust wine culture. And a lot of, in the last 10 years, I think a lot of young winemakers have come back home and started to work really with local grapes and have really started to do blends that are more unique and unusual. And I think it's been at least for us, we have a spirit store, so we have a lot of Lebanese wines. I mean, dozens. Now they're doing orange wines, something that you would have never seen 10 years ago. Absolutely not seen it. It's great that they're spreading their wings and doing all these super interesting varieties, because I mean, it's great for them to explore their uniqueness as a country, and it's great for the wine drinker to have, to try things that you're never going to get an Obidi grape outside of the Middle East. It's just not a grape that grows anywhere. It's not a grape that's cultivated. It might grow, but it's not cultivated. So that's one of the reasons why I always try to pair a really great, interesting Lebanese wine, because I want people to see the culture as rich and robust as it really is.
So interesting. I'm super curious about is it the Bekaa Valley?
Yes.
No.
That's where almost everything in Lebanon grows. Like Lebanon it's a very small country. From 2 hours, you can go from the mountains to the ocean. You can be skiing out on the beach, like pretty much. So it's a very small country, but a lot of the growing area of Lebanon, and they grow a ton of food, is in the Bekaa Valley. The soil is very, very rich. There must be a dozen wineries surrounding the Bekaa Valley. And that's also where they grow apricots and figs and all the things that the Middle East is known for. The Bekaa Valley has a terrific terrain for all of those type of things. So while they don't have a lot of space to grow to export, I mean, they do export, but they don't export. They use a lot of that food in country, so that they don't have to import, because the Bekaa Valley is just so rich, and because it's a very interesting climate there. So it doesn't rain in the summer in Lebanon ever. Like even if the sky is dark, it never ever rains. So they get a ton of rain leading up to the summer, which helps to bring the crops up and get things started. But they don't have a lot of problems with root rot and stuff like that, because it doesn't rain a lot after that while the plants are fully grown. So yes, they can irrigate, of course, and they have to, but because they can rely on the rainy season to be a season, like in the US, we don't have a rainy season, it just rains whenever it wants. So it's very different. Well, we have to be a lot more controlling about our irrigation and our drainage processes to make sure that the plants are not either overwatered or underwatered. They have a lot less problems with that because the flow from the mountains, from the flow from the mountains from the winter helps to irrigate, and they get a lot of rain in the spring. So the combination of those two makes for a very fruitful climate and land, so to speak, for growing. And the Bekaa Valley is widely known in that region because a lot of the Middle East is desert. And Lebanon doesn't have any desert. It's right on the Mediterranean. It's got the huge Bekaa Valley. So it's got quite a different climate than a lot of other regions in the Middle East. It makes it unique. I think that's one of the reasons why grapes grow so well there.
Yeah, and I think also that maybe is why it is so well known for its culinary culture. You know, it's just because it has all of those agricultural wealth in its backyard. Okay, I'm gonna let you get a sip of wine, Christine, and I wanted to check in with everyone who is with us to let you know that we will be hosting a special holiday cook-along that you can gift to family and friends. We're hoping to have like multiple camera angles for that. Thank you for noting that in the chat, Steve. So we're thinking pomegranate molasses glazed baby lamb chops, pan-fried potatoes, brown butter halva cookies. And so for the folks who are in the class today, I just wanted to poll you really quickly whether you would prefer to have that class in November or December. We're looking at probably like the 2 weeks before Thanksgiving or like just before Christmas, like December 20th or thereabouts. So if you have any preference, please type that in the chat and we'll definitely take that into account. Yeah, and I'm going to go ahead and sign off here and let Christine have the last word. So thank you again, everyone, for coming. We sincerely hope you enjoyed it, and you will get the recording in your inboxes. So over to you, Christine, to say goodbye and bon appetit.
Thank you so much for joining me. I hope everybody who cooked along with us really enjoys their meal, and hopefully we'll see you at the next one. Cheers.